What's up, everyone? How you doing? ¿Cómo están? I'm here with Nicholas Sanders, a local realtor in Merida, Yucatan. Nicholas, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
This is exciting. So, I have some family here. Came on a trip, getting to know more Mexico, and Merida is known to be one of the safest, or the safest city in Mexico,
Right.
second in North America, which we'll soon get into what exactly that means. And it's a place that a lot of Canadians and Americans are buying in. And I think it's for reasons different than when they're buying in the resort towns. And I think there's a lot of great potential in terms of the cultural aspects, but also the financial aspects. So, I mean, jumping into it, what attracted you to Merida? Give us a bit of your story, and let's lead into why is Merida a worthwhile place to investigate if people are looking to buy real estate in Mexico.
Well, Merida's different aspect is it's a city, it's an established city, it's not just a resort town.
Yeah.
You know, some cities like Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, they've only existed for decades, where Merida is almost 500 years old.
Wow.
And it's really the regional capital of the Yucatan, the peninsula itself. So, you know, we don't just have tourism here, we have schools, we have industry, we have hospitals, and we have established communities here.
Yeah.
Both local and foreign communities that have been here for forever.
Right.
So it's a different vibe than you might get in a place that's more transient.
Yeah.
And that's the appeal, because it, in some aspects, it can make it more affordable.
Right.
And there's more amenities for you for full-time living.
Right.
But you don't necessarily lose that vibe for vacation either, if that's your goal.
Yeah.
With you know, everything that's around the city and the city itself, it's still a good vacation destination.
Got it. So it's a nice blend of everything, is what I'm
Exactly,
getting.
yes.
And you, I mean, obviously, when you first landed here, what was it like to integrate? That's always people's biggest concern, especially as a resident and a real estate owner. Like, tell us about that story.
Well, these days, I think it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, with technology advancing, now you have Uber, you have delivery, you have social media. There's a much easier way to connect to the community,
Right.
to find the resources you need. When I moved here 13 years ago, you know, I'm going to buy a toaster today, and that's what I did for the day. By the time I got into a taxi, went to a couple of different places and stuff, I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah.
You know, now it's like, you know,
It's quick, accessible.
accessible. So, I mean, I think people, if they're worried about getting integrated into the city, they should feel like it should be very easy.
Yeah.
It's really just a willingness to learn the language, learn the culture, be patient.
Right.
The goal, you know, and
Yeah.
you are in a different place.
Totally. But there are enough Canadians and Americans to pretty much get around with just English if you absolutely had to. It sounds like, maybe not like a resort town, but it sounds like it's developed enough where that wouldn't be prohibitive.
Well, yeah, in a way, like, you don't have to feel like you're immediately going to be isolated because you're still learning the language, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, obviously, you want to learn the language and get integrated,
Yeah.
but you don't have to feel like you don't have a friend or someone to talk to.
Right.
There's plenty of people with English. Even locals learn English. It's very common to learn in schools, especially
course.
private schools.
Yeah, and they have
So,
those here.
yeah, learn the language, but then again, don't be afraid that that's going to happen after you move here.
Yeah.
Even if you try to learn online or with some kind of program app, you're going to learn the language after you move here, and
For sure.
that's part of the process.
Yeah, get integrated.
Yeah.
Love it. And so Merida versus Mexico City, Cancun, Acapulco. Cancun's very close by. Why Merida from a quality of life and a financial perspective, especially for buying real estate? Let's dive into that.
Okay. Well, right now, Merida is a hub for investment for the Mexican government. They have been putting money in the Yucatan for years now.
Right, I heard about
when
that.
I moved here, you know, driving along the coastline was crazy. It was a tiny little road, and that was a major project years ago. And then the beach developed. And kind of the rule of investment here in Mexico is follow where the government's putting money in.
Interesting.
And right now, they're putting more money into the Yucatan than I've ever seen the United States do in
Yeah.
anywhere I lived.
Why? Why is it the golden goose for them?
I really don't know quite why the Yucatan has been such a center, but I think its popularity that it's built on its own, and now the government's recognizing it and saying, yeah, we'll jump in too.
Yeah.
You know, the renovation of Central started with individual investment, and finally the government started to pick up and say, well, we'll pitch in too, and now they're doing the train, which is connecting the whole peninsula.
So you're saying from here I can go to what specific cities that the viewers might recognize?
Well, now you can go all the way from Merida to Campeche to Palenque.
This will be a high-speed train?
Or it's not like Japanese high speed, but
fair
it's
enough. A train.
But it's like Amtrak.
Yeah,
but nicer.
Awesome.
Cool.
Cool.
And then also there's a southern route.
When's that going to be finished, by the way? Estimated date?
Well, at this point the train is running.
Oh, okay.
It's not fully.
Okay, but like
they're working out the kinks, and then the southern route. Actually, I don't know what the date on that is, but it is soon.
Okay.
I mean, everything will. At this point, the presidential elections are coming up here in Mexico.
2024.
And I do know the train will be done before then.
Great. Okay. So it's happening.
They have built a pretty major infrastructure to build a train, and all that's done.
Wow.
So for us here watching it locally, we're kind of like, is this train coming? And finally, boom, it was here.
Yep.
So now they're really it's moving quick.
Love it.
And then on top of the train, they're doing La Plancha Park, which is a major investment.
This is the
La Plancha Park.
Okay.
And then also the Calle 47 restaurant row. They just renovated that.
What makes this park so important? Is it like a big plaza, or what makes it sort of? How does it contribute to real estate, for example? Like, is it really that big, or what's?
Well, I think Centro has needed some green space.
Central is the downtown, just to clarify.
The downtown. Needed some green space, a place
it's
to
important.
walk and exercise, take your dog. So I really think that was a missing amenity for the downtown area. And it is huge, and it's turned out quite nice. It was a really fantastic project.
Oh, cool.
So I really see that being another reason to invest here, another area to consider making, Centro a larger area to have areas to choose from.
Yeah.
You used to have Santiago, Santa Ana, Santa Lucia.
Yeah.
Now you have La Plancha to consider as an area that's really great to buy in. And of course, there's Centro's a large area. There's lots of areas of Centro to consider.
Yeah, we'll talk about that actually. Price ranges I've heard from the locals as little as 60,000. A lot of realtors say now I'm looking more to 300 to 500,000 USD. Of course, it depends, but what are the starter homes people usually buy? I mean, let's put it somewhere in the happy medium in an area that's close to Centro. I think the Beach Progresso is 34 minutes away, right? If you're sort of in the middle, like what's kind of like, I guess in the last 5 years, the most common area people seem to be buying from Canada and the U.S. What is that area? What are the costs usually? And is it usually these sort of like, I guess more the apartments, the pre-sales, which I'm sure have their risk, or is it more the little casas, like one we stayed in? It's maybe 2 or 3 bedrooms. It has maybe a little mini pool. It's like a one-level thing. Like what kind of property type and prices are people most jumping into for quality of life reasons, but also financial ones, appreciation, rental capacity, wherever you want to take that would be awesome to hear.
I would say most of the buyers are looking for a smaller independent home.
Yep.
Not too many are looking for apartments. Only a few are really coming down here and buying like a hacienda or something grand. So most are looking for a 2-3 bedroom home because most people goal is to retire.
Yeah.
Or they're just they're getting away from the hustle and bustle and they don't necessarily need a massive home.
Yep.
So 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, so one's a guest, one's an office. Live-in workspace is definitely important these days.
Yep.
But of course, typically the buyers want to be somewhat walking distance, so the areas of Centro, Santiago, Santa Ana, Santa Lucia, there's San Sebastian, La Ermita, Merida, La Plancha. Being in these areas where there's parks, markets, restaurants, cafes is the most important, and most of our buyers are looking to spend, on average, $200,000-$400,000 is the point for something finished.
Yeah.
So whether that's you're buying to renovate and that's going to be your all-in, or that's kind of the goal area to be in. I mean, you can get a larger, nicer home, and they'll reach as high as $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. Low end, if you're really lucky, you might be able to find a small place a little more basic, around $150,000, $200,000. Really, it's almost even something small and basic is getting up to $250,000 these days. I mean, are really going. And renovation projects are going up the quickest as well.
Labor cost, material costs, is that what you mean? Like it's become more expensive?
No, to buy just the project itself.
Okay.
The raw house or the raw land.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say those are the hugest increase. So these days you can almost buy something under replacement value because the cost to renovate and the cost to buy that project unfinished is a lot more in terms of the finished homes.
Yeah.
So, easily a few years ago, you come here around $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, you can start finding out projects.
Yeah.
And now $3.5 million seems to be the bottom of the market. I mean, if you're open, because you don't have to live in the main areas of Centro. If you're open, you can go to the outskirts and you can start finding cheaper properties. I mean, I don't live in the main core of Centro, and I enjoy the city very much. I live in Chuminopolis, and I'm not going to say what we bought our house for, even back in that day.
Right.
We really picked up something at a great price. But the point is, there's a lot of great areas of Merida to choose from too. And you're kind of touching base on pre-sales and the north side. There's a whole another section of the city to consider as well.
Yeah.
Inside the city in the north, outside the city in the north, there's new projects.
Interesting.
A massive amount of construction happening and opportunity for people to choose from all budgets, and that's always something to consider. Whether you have $1 million or you have $100,000, Merida does have something to offer you.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then you made a moment ago around $3 million. That would be like for someone buys land and they're making like a pretty big structure. What was that referencing?
Oh, like what was the amount?
You said about $3.5 million.
Oh, $3.5 million. $3.5 million would give you like a giant hacienda.
Yeah.
That's historic.
These are like, okay.
No, maybe I misspoke.
Okay.
No, pesos. Sorry,
Okay.
3.5 million pesos
Okay,
is
just
what
clarify.
a project starts out at.
Got it. Okay, so we're like $250,000. Okay, got it. On that note, are people are you seeing bigger investors like invest in commercial real estate, build multifamilies, build hotels? Like there's a lot of people that I think have the expertise to project manage, to construct. Is that something that you're seeing people do?
Actually, that's something finally I'm seeing to come to Centro itself.
Okay.
Is right now there is massive home that's been empty for years. Someone has bought that, and by the front historic structure is going to be like a communal area. Behind it is a couple of towers and some townhouses.
Okay.
But then that's also very common in Northeast developments: towers, townhomes, gated communities, and then also inside the city between Centro and the north. People buy huge lots and turn them into multi-family or projects. So it is opportunity here, and really is something that's needed in Centro, apartment buildings and that type of option, whether it's for renters or for buyers.
Sure.
Just so can be. You want to live Centro, and only thing is a house.
Right. Interesting.
The few apartments that are available in Centro have always seems to get snatched up really quick because it's a great option for that person who is retired and they don't need a yard and maintenance, or someone that's vacationing and just coming and going.
Is there a housing shortage here, like there is in pretty much all of North America? Is that like a thing the government's mandating? Like in Vancouver, there's a big shortage, right? In Ontario and BC, and there's lots of incentives for developers to build big properties and increase the housing supply. Is that an all thing here, or?
No, there's definitely not a housing shortage. I would say inventory's always been somewhat low for years. When I first started real estate, I could spend days showing houses to a client, going by a budget and size, and going by those features. And now I typically will spend a couple mornings with a client to show them all their options. Maybe 20, 30 homes is probably what they're going to see. To as an offer. If you go to North, that could definitely increase quite a bit. But here in Centro, you come here, no, you're not going to find a housing shortage, but also you're not going to find an insane amount of options either.
Okay.
Going by the fact that you're focused on a price point and a goal. If you come here and you're like, I don't know what I want to spend and I don't know what I want, well, you can spend weeks looking, obviously.
We need focus.
But then that's always something I recommend is to be focused. Which would be the same anywhere in the world, I guess.
Definitely. And a big part of focus is what's the return? So generally speaking, for the investors out there that might use it 1 or 2 weeks out of the year, I'm guessing they're more so Airbnb-ing. Are they midterm renting? What's the most popular kind of income stream, short or long-term rentals? And what are some basic numbers that come to mind? Maybe some case studies of people that you've found homes for. what are the, I don't know, any kind of metric, cap rate, monthly rental in USD?
Well, I am an agent that focuses on sales, so I can't give a lot of data on rentals. But I would say most people who are coming and buying a property and not using it full time is putting the property on Airbnb or short-time rental.
Yeah. No restrictions around that. Obviously, Mexico's super liberal with.
The only thing that Mexico's looking for is that you pay your taxes.
Yep.
You know, so when you rent, they're going to expect you to pay your taxes, and they are watching.
Yeah.
Some people think that Mexico is not that kind of country that does that, but they are.
Fair.
But it's easy. There's not a lot of restrictions or guidelines or any type of licensing you need. You can just rent and, hey, just pay your taxes and you're good to go.
Yeah, and have the rents gone up the last couple of years?
Oh, yeah,
down?
definitely.
I mean, there's a bit of a recession potentially coming. I mean, what's it been like, honestly speaking?
For someone that's, say, going to buy a property and they're going to use it part-time, what their goal for renting most likely would be is they're going to hold that property for free, probably make a small profit.
Okay,
they're
so people are breaking even a little bit.
They're easily breaking.
Oh yeah.
I would be very surprised if someone told me they weren't breaking easy. Well, you're doing something wrong.
Right, and to define breaking even, the vibe here is probably people buying in cash. If it was on a mortgage, that's different. I assume most of it's cash buying.
Yeah, it's mostly cash buying.
So they're breaking even on the taxes, which I would hope they could break even.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of nights of rent and you paid your yearly tax.
I hope so. Yeah.
A couple of weeks of renting and you paid your fideicomiso for the year.
You want to define what that is?
That's the trust that typically foreigners are using to hold a property, and that's actually costs more than your taxes.
So I heard it's about $600. So essentially, for the viewers, the government says, if you're not like a local, you've got to buy sort of like this trust, as you said.
Correct.
It's about $600 a year,
maximum.
And like I don't know, there's some legal fees probably to get that going. And I guess you indirectly own it, but you own it. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people maybe we shift now into some of the risks. The fact that I don't own something outright, I own it through something. It makes me think of the worst case where some people have like bought land that was actually First Nations leasehold and it was never there. So talk about some of the risks in terms like, scams, things to look out for, all the way to some of these, I guess intricacies of buying real estate that, I don't know, sound a little bit sketchy for the first Canadian to look. That sounds a little weird.
I own property in a trust, so I do trust the system. So, a trust is just like what we know a trust to be. It's a bank entity that has assets. And so in this case, it's a land trust. There are different types of fideicomisos in Mexico, but the one we use specifically is a hold land. And basically you and the bank have a contract to manage that trust together. Banks, of course, have to be the facilitator. That's what part of bank's functions is a trust. And then you are the beneficiary of the trust, meaning you have all the rights and responsibilities on ownership. The bank is really just, you pay the money each year, but they're also there to follow your guidelines. Hey, I want to sell this. Tell us, write us a letter. And hey, I want to change my beneficiaries. Write a letter. We'll do that. So you have full control, and at that point, there is no risk of you losing it. Even if the bank were to have problems, the trusts are transferable. So right now, we're moving, not everyone, but some clients are moving their trust from Scotiabank to a different bank, and
Is Scotiabank, it's a Canadian bank. We do a lot of business with them. Are they losing some market share here, or is that a trend?
Well,
I'm curious.
Scotiabank is only a Canadian bank by name. They are a fully Mexican bank.
Of course,
But no, they're just getting out of the fideicomiso business.
Oh, interesting.
Typically, this transfer of banks happens at the time of sale. People aren't doing it beforehand. But it's just a process. It's nothing to worry about.
The mortgages are, by the way, fairly accessible here. I know most people are cash buying, but I guess Scotiabank and other banks fairly freely give mortgages. Do you have any idea how they're qualifying foreigners for mortgages?
Well, foreigners are not eligible for mortgage here. You can't just jump off the plane and say, give me financing.
Is it possible?
No. You have to live here and be established here, just like in the States and Canada.
Got it.
If you were in Vancouver and someone moved across the street, like, hey, I'm from France and I want a mortgage, you'd be like, well, get yourself established. And same thing here.
Is that permanent residency or what is establishment? Because in Vancouver, for example, someone who is here on a work permit or anything that shows a little bit of establishment, they can go as little as 5-10% down. Right now, there's a foreign buyers ban. So, yes, if you don't hold permanent residency or a work permit, you're technically not allowed to buy. But coming with a work permit is fairly doable, and even students can be buying properties if they're staying here for a little bit of time. So what is established to be able to be mortgage eligible here?
Yeah, so the bank is looking for you to have residency. I believe they will do temporary. Could be permanent, might be a requirement. Actually, I don't know.
Yep.
But they do want you to have residency.
Yep.
At that point, they're looking at a bank history, credit history, and some kind of proof of income.
Yeah.
Mexico does have a little bit of flexibility on how you prove your income.
Okay. So self-employed people
you don't necessarily
earning
have to have a check stub or something. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes it's like
invoices or
some people might be living off retirement.
yes.
So that monthly deposit into a Mexican bank might be enough to get a loan.
Okay. Interesting. So it seems like it's pretty flexible.
Don't quote me too much.
No,
on
no
this,
worries. I mean, and
but,
there are some bank Canada, some private lenders that are actually lending for Canadians coming to Mexico. There's a couple ones we've talked to. So there's financing options, which is interesting.
Now, that's a different option. I don't find that as is, hey, I'm going to Mexico, I'm asking a bank to finance. Now, there are cross border mortgage brokers that is working with a foreigner to qualify for a loan in Mexico. Actually, Intercam is a Mexican bank that's doing that.
Okay.
One thing I do like about them is they're 100% Mexican based.
Yep.
There's no some companies that operate in both the United States and Mexico, which kind of makes it a very blurred line, like, well, where if there's something goes wrong, which country is the jurisdiction? Well, the property's in Mexico. So
Right.
One thing I haven't had a client use it yet. I don't know the process completely, but one thing I have learned about that process is it's 100% Mexico.
Yeah.
The financing, the escrow, everything happens in Mexico, which means, and the property's in Mexico, so that's kind of how it should be.
Right.
But they are using the credit from Canada and the United States. Actually, I'm not sure if Intercam does Canadians,
Right.
it may just be Americans.
Something to look into.
But there are cross-border mortgage programs for foreigners to use. And also, really, I think the best option if someone does want to finance is to do some kind of refinancing or HELOC or
Right.
something
And buying cash.
in their home country that's probably going to have the best rates, the
Yeah.
best fees.
Totally.
Because one thing, too, these cross-border mortgage programs is the fees have a sticker shock. I've seen some of them, it's like, okay.
Right. The upfront fees or just the 12%-ish mortgage fee?
Well, overall, yeah. Because closing costs here are already a little bit on the high side. You know, some people are like, "Whoa, I can't believe how much it costs to close on a property."
Yeah,
Be
yeah.
cash buyer. So then you add the financing fees, and you're like, "Whoa, it gets halting."
Then maybe you're not breaking even. And that's actually a great way to end off. Let's say the viewers are watching, they're like, you know what, I'm pretty interested. I'm sick of inflation, high costs in Canada, and I'm sick of the weather. I want to have a refuge. They come to you, Nicholas, what's the process from A to Z to buy a property here? We'll talk more about closing costs.
Yeah.
We'll talk about timelines, just A to Z. How would you break it down in as little words as possible?
Well, really quick, I want to say is one of the big factors of coming here is the cost of living.
Okay.
You know, if you're coming here to buy cheap property, well, you can go to Indianapolis and buy a house just as cheap.
Yeah.
But the cost of living, your taxes, that's where you're going to save money. And I'm going to switch over back to what you're saying about closing costs. So here, your closing costs will be you pay for the entire title transfer.
Right.
And the seller pays nothing. The seller pays the agency fees or the commission.
Yeah.
They pay any capital gains tax they owe,
course, yeah.
and that's it. You as a buyer are paying all the fees to transfer the title in your name.
Yeah.
That would include the fideicomiso, whether it means forming it or transferring it in
Yeah.
your name if you're buying from a buyer.
Yeah.
You have an acquisition tax.
Yeah, like property, we call it property transfer tax, basically.
Or
Yeah.
property transfer tax.
Some version of that.
You should expect that to start out at minimal of 3.5%,
Okay.
and it goes up. So a luxury property could have a much higher percentage. Beach properties also have a higher, it could be 4%, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And then you have the legal fees themselves, which is their notarial fees. And this includes everything equivalent of like a title search, preparing your fideicomiso, preparing the title, the certificate of no debts, all these things that they're doing for you. And that will probably start out at minimal of 70,000 pesos.
Yeah.
And it also goes up.
Got it.
It could, high would be like probably 120. Then again, I don't necessarily say it would cap there.
Right.
And also to circle back, to form a fideicomiso, it's in the ballpark of 54,000 pesos. So easily a more affordable house, you're still looking at $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 in closing costs. And a luxury home, you could be looking, as high as 40, 50, depends on how much you're spending in closing costs once you include everything, your taxes.
Got it.
So.
Okay, yeah, something to obviously consider as people are buying. Any last notes, words of wisdom for the prospective buyers in Merida?
Don't put the cart before the horse. Start your research, start getting information before you start looking at. For me, I really like doing consultations for people who are just starting to look, and that way they have some of the information they need to make the decisions. Sometimes people decide, hey, I want to buy, but maybe you're not really ready to buy for 2 more years and you don't know it because you don't have the information.
Sure.
Maybe
in terms of like they don't have the cost covered or...
Yeah, or maybe they think they can come down here and get a mortgage like that. And maybe they realize, oh, I need to figure out how to finance this where I'm at. Or yeah, sometimes people just, they don't really think about what's going to happen with purchase. They
Happens locally as well. Happens locally as well. Here it's even more of a reason.
And it can be disappointing, when you start looking and you realize you're 2 years out, well, that means your prices are going to change in 2 years.
Yep.
And you're going to be going, remember that house? Well, that house is gone. That price point's gone.
Yeah.
So get prepared. Information is key. Because there's a lot of good information out there and there's a lot of wrong information. Mexico loves to snap a finger and change something.
Right.
And so...
law-wise, you mean, or...?
Law, policy, costs, and so sometimes that's why it's good to get information.
Yeah.
Contact a professional, whether you prefer to work with an attorney directly or have an agent represent you so they can tell you what's currently happening and you know that you know what's currently happening and you're not using it from year, 2 years, 3 years old because, Mexico will change overnight on you.
Yeah, gotta be careful. Nicholas, muchísimo gusto. Thank you so much. That was super informative, and I'm sure people will get in touch. We'll link to your information in the show notes here, and
Perfect.
Hasta la próxima.
Okay, well, thank you so much.